What if the thing you've been blaming on stress, on age, on a bad week, is actually your body sending you a signal you've been trained to ignore? Because here's what nobody tells you up front. Low testosterone doesn't always feel dramatic. It doesn't always announce itself. Most of the time, it creeps in quietly. It looks like tiredness. It looks like losing your edge. It feels like you, but turned down. And the dangerous part? Most men dismiss it for years, sometimes decades. My name is Dr. Marcus Reed. I'm a board-certified endocrinologist, and I've spent the last 22 years studying exactly how hormonal shifts reshape a man's body, his energy, and, though people don't talk about this enough, his sense of himself. I didn't start making these videos because I had something to sell. I started making them because I kept seeing the same thing in my clinic, week after week. Men who had been dismissed, told they were just tired, told it was aging, told to get more sleep and reduce stress, and sent home without anyone actually looking at what was happening inside their body. Pause. The case that changed how I practice medicine involved a 41-year-old named Stephen. Stephen came in thinking he had burnout. He was a project manager, 2 kids, decent marriage, no history of major illness. He sat across from me and said, "Dr. Reed, I don't feel like myself anymore, and I don't know when it started." He wasn't sleeping well. He'd gained about 18 pounds over 2 years without changing his diet. He'd lost interest in things he used to love. His gym sessions were half what they used to be. 3 doctors had told him he was stressed and overworked. One suggested antidepressants. Not a single one had run a full hormonal panel. His total testosterone came back at 187 nanograms per deciliter. The normal range for a man his age is between 400 and 700. He was nearly at the floor. What you're about to hear are the 7 signs that Stephen, and millions of men like him, had been carrying for years. And more importantly, what you can actually do about it. The first one is the easiest to miss, which is exactly why it's the most dangerous. You're tired. Not the kind of tired that a good night's sleep fixes. Not the kind that coffee touches. This is a different animal entirely. It's the tiredness that sits behind your eyes when you wake up. The kind that makes the morning feel like moving through water before you've done a single thing. Most men blame it on their schedule, on not sleeping enough, on getting older. And that framing makes sense on the surface, but it's wrong in a very specific way. When testosterone is low, your body's ability to produce cellular energy is directly impaired. Think of testosterone like the foreman on a construction site. When the foreman's not there, the workers are still present, the materials are there, but nothing gets built efficiently. Everything slows, productivity drops, and by the end of the day, the site looks like almost nothing happened even though everyone showed up. That's what's happening in your muscles and cells when your testosterone is significantly below range. A study published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism found that men with low testosterone reported fatigue and reduced energy at nearly twice the rate of men with normal levels, even after controlling for sleep quality, age, and physical activity. That means the exhaustion isn't coming from your life. It's coming from your chemistry. The practical step here? Track your energy at 2 specific times, right when you wake up and around 2 to 3 in the afternoon. If both windows consistently feel like you're running on empty, that pattern matters. Write it down before your next doctor's appointment. That data tells a story. But the fatigue is just the beginning, because what comes with it, what most men are even less willing to admit, is something more visible. You look in the mirror and notice things you can't fully explain. The arms that used to hold definition, the waist that used to be leaner, the chest that didn't used to feel soft. And you've been working out. Maybe not as hard as before, but you haven't stopped. So why is the body changing without your permission? Here's what's actually happening. Testosterone is the primary signal your body uses to say, build muscle, preserve it, and burn fat for fuel. When that signal drops, your body does the opposite. It begins pulling energy from muscle tissue and redirecting fat storage, particularly around the abdomen and chest. The medical term is hypogonadism-associated body recomposition. The lived experience is feeling like a stranger in your own body. I always explain it to patients this way. Imagine your metabolism is a furnace. Testosterone is the fuel that keeps it burning hot. When the fuel drops, the furnace cools. And when a furnace cools, it stops burning efficiently. Fat accumulates. Muscle, the expensive tissue the body treats as optional, gets broken down instead. Research from the New England Journal of Medicine demonstrated that men with hypogonadism lost significant lean muscle mass over 16 weeks, even without changes in diet or activity. The muscle didn't go away because they stopped working hard. It went away because the hormonal signal to preserve it was gone. The action step here isn't just adding protein, though that matters. It's resistance training 3 times a week with a specific focus on compound movements: squats, deadlifts, rows. These movements trigger the largest testosterone response in your body's natural production cycle. Start there before anything else. Now I want to pause here for a second, because what I just described, the fatigue, the body composition shifts, are the signs men most often bring up. But the next 3 are the ones they almost never say out loud. And those are the ones I'm most concerned about. So if any of this is sounding familiar, drop a yes in the comments. I genuinely want to know who this is reaching. The one nobody talks about in the waiting room: your drive. And I don't mean motivation in a general sense, I mean libido. The biological pull toward intimacy, toward connection, toward physical closeness. When testosterone drops significantly, that drive, which most men have had their entire adult lives, begins to quiet. Sometimes gradually, sometimes faster than they expect. And almost every man I've seen with this sign says the same thing. It was confusing before it was anything else. It's not the absence of attraction to their partner. It's the absence of the internal pull. The difference is subtle but important.
Testosterone is the primary hormonal driver of libido in men. When levels fall below 300 nanograms per deciliter, and for many men, even above that threshold, the body simply stops generating that signal with the same intensity. The Mayo Clinic notes that reduced libido is one of the earliest and most consistent indicators of low testosterone, present in a significant majority of diagnosed cases. Think of it like the volume knob on a radio. The music is still there, the station hasn't changed, but someone has been slowly turning the volume down for months, and one day you realize the room is almost silent and you can't remember exactly when it got that quiet. The practical step here is not to immediately reach for a supplement. The first step is honesty with yourself and, if you're in a relationship, with your partner. Acknowledge the change. Name it. Because the worst thing that can happen is that a hormonal issue turns into a relational wound because it was never discussed.
This one hits hardest in the evenings, when the house is quiet, when the noise of the day is gone, and there's nothing left to fill the space where something used to live. Here's where it gets more serious. And this is the sign I wish more people asked me about: brain fog. Not forgetfulness in the normal sense, not losing your keys. I'm talking about sitting in a meeting and realizing that for the last 10 minutes, your brain was physically not there. I'm talking about starting 3 tasks and finishing none of them. The feeling of reading a paragraph and arriving at the end with no memory of what you just read. Testosterone has direct receptors in the brain, particularly in areas governing executive function, spatial reasoning, and verbal memory. When levels fall, cognitive sharpness doesn't just dim, it fragments.
The Journal of the American Medical Association published findings showing that men with low testosterone performed measurably worse on cognitive tests, including memory recall and processing speed, compared to age-matched men with normal levels. Stephen, the patient I told you about at the beginning, said the brain fog was the thing that scared him most. "I'm a project manager," he told me. "My job is to think, and I started feeling like I was thinking through a wet blanket." He thought he was developing early cognitive decline. He wasn't. His brain was running on insufficient hormonal fuel. I always describe it to patients this way. Your brain is a high-performance engine. Testosterone is part of the premium fuel it needs to run at full capacity. Switch to low-grade fuel and the engine still runs, but not cleanly. It misfires. It hesitates. You feel it in every task that used to come easily. The action step. Start protecting your sleep architecture aggressively.
The majority of testosterone is produced during deep sleep cycles, specifically REM and deep slow-wave sleep. If your sleep is fragmented, light, or cut short, your brain and body are running a deficit every single morning before the day even begins. Aim for 7 to 9 hours. Cut screens 90 minutes before bed. The hormonal payoff is real. And then, quietly underneath all of it, comes the one that catches men completely off guard: their mood. Not in the dramatic, visible way. Most men with low testosterone don't collapse. They don't stop functioning. What they experience is subtler and in some ways more corrosive. A shorter fuse, a lower baseline of patience, a sense of flatness, not depression exactly, but the absence of enthusiasm. Things that used to create joy stop creating it. Irritability that doesn't have a clear cause. A persistent low-level sense that something is wrong, without being able to name what. The research here is unambiguous.
A study from the Endocrine Society found that men with testosterone deficiency had significantly higher rates of depressive symptoms, irritability, and reduced sense of well-being compared to men with normal levels, independent of life circumstances or stress exposure. What I've seen in 22 years of practice is this. The mood changes are often what finally bring men in. Not the fatigue, not the libido. It's when they start snapping at their kids, or withdrawing from the people they love, or lying awake at night with a low-grade dread they can't explain. That's when they finally say, something is wrong. That last part, lying awake. I want to stay here for a moment, because this is a symptom that hits hardest at night. It doesn't hit during the commute or the meeting or the workout. It hits when you're lying in the dark and there's nothing left to distract you from it. That creeping sense that you've become a quieter, dimmer version of yourself.
That the distance you feel from your own life is growing, not shrinking. That feeling deserves a real answer. Not a prescription for antidepressants handed over in a 10-minute appointment. A real answer. And often, that answer begins with a blood test. The action step. If you're experiencing mood changes that don't connect to anything happening in your life, no identifiable stress, no recent loss, no obvious cause, that is a clinical data point, not a personal failure. Tell your doctor. Specifically, request a full hormonal panel. It's a simple blood draw. It can change everything. I want you to pay close attention to this next one, because this is the sign that has the longest lag time between onset and diagnosis. And that lag time carries real consequences. Poor sleep. Not just difficulty falling asleep. Not just waking up once in the night. I mean chronic, fragmented, non-restorative sleep.
The kind where you spend 8 hours in bed and wake up feeling like you didn't sleep at all. The kind where you fall asleep fine, but your body keeps pulling you back to the surface, cycling you through light sleep again and again, never letting you go deep. Here's the mechanism. Testosterone and sleep exist in a reinforcing cycle. Deep sleep is when your body produces the majority of its testosterone. But low testosterone disrupts sleep architecture, specifically by reducing time spent in deep, restorative sleep stages. So low testosterone causes poor sleep, and poor sleep causes lower testosterone. It feeds itself. The National Institutes of Health has documented this bidirectional relationship extensively. In one study, men who slept only 5 hours per night for 1 week showed a 10 to 15% reduction in daytime testosterone levels compared to their baseline. That's after 1 week. Imagine the cumulative impact over months or years.
Think of this relationship like two gears that are supposed to turn each other. When one loses teeth, both stop working correctly. You can't fix the sleep without addressing the hormone. You can't restore the hormone without protecting the sleep. You have to approach both simultaneously. The practical step. Add zinc and magnesium to your evening routine. Multiple peer-reviewed studies, including research from Biological Trace Element Research, have shown that zinc and magnesium supplementation meaningfully improves sleep depth and supports testosterone production in men who are deficient in these minerals. Most men are. The fix is inexpensive and has significant evidence behind it. This is where the conversation changes. The first 6 signs I've walked you through, fatigue, body composition, libido, cognition, mood, sleep, they affect quality of life. They are serious. They deserve attention. But this last one? This one affects length of life, bone density. I know. When men hear bone density, they think of elderly women and osteoporosis. It feels distant, abstract. And that disconnect is exactly why this sign goes unaddressed until it creates a crisis. Testosterone plays a critical role in maintaining bone mineral density in men. It signals osteoblasts, the cells responsible for building and maintaining bone tissue, to keep working. When testosterone drops significantly, that signal fades. Bone remodeling slows, density decreases, and bone that has lost density doesn't announce itself with pain or visible symptoms. It's silent until it isn't. The American Journal of Medicine published data showing that men with low testosterone had bone mineral density scores significantly below age-matched controls, and were at substantially higher risk of fracture. Not in their 80s, in their 40s and 50s. But here's what makes this most serious. Low testosterone is also independently associated with increased cardiovascular risk.
A landmark study in Heart, one of the leading cardiology journals, found that men with low testosterone had significantly higher rates of cardiovascular events, including heart attack and stroke, compared to men with normal levels. The hormonal system doesn't operate in isolation. When it falters, it pulls other systems with it. This is the sign that Stephen, who I mentioned at the start of this video, never would have connected to how he was feeling. He came in exhausted and emotionally flat. He had no idea that the same hormonal deficit making him feel like a dimmer version of himself was also quietly affecting the structural integrity of his bones and the health of his heart. Let that land for a moment. The practical step here is one of the most important ones in this entire video. Get a baseline DEXA scan if you're over 40 and have 2 or more of the signs I've described. This is a low-radiation, non-invasive scan that measures bone density directly.
Many men have never had one. It gives you information you cannot get any other way. And in the context of low testosterone, that information could be life-changing. Before I close, a few natural strategies that the research actually supports. First, resistance training is the single most evidence-backed behavioral intervention for supporting natural testosterone production. 3 to 4 sessions per week, prioritizing compound, multi-joint movements. Not optional, non-negotiable. Second, get your vitamin D levels tested. A study published in Hormone and Metabolic Research found that men who were vitamin D deficient and supplemented to healthy levels showed a 25% increase in testosterone over 12 months. Vitamin D functions more like a hormone than a vitamin, and its relationship to testosterone production is direct and well documented. Third, manage cortisol. Chronic stress elevates cortisol, and cortisol directly suppresses testosterone production.
They are inversely related. What lowers cortisol, sleep, cold exposure, breathwork, time in nature, supports testosterone. This isn't wellness language, it's endocrinology. Fourth, cut alcohol, particularly at night. Even moderate alcohol consumption is associated with measurable reductions in testosterone levels. The mechanism involves the liver, which processes both alcohol and sex hormones. When your liver is occupied metabolizing alcohol, testosterone clearance is altered. The effect is real, and it's dose-dependent. And fifth, and I cannot emphasize this enough, get the blood test. A simple testosterone panel through your primary care physician or endocrinologist is where everything starts. The range you're looking for. Total testosterone between 400 and 700 nanograms per deciliter for most men, though optimal ranges vary by age and lab. If your levels are below that range, you have information. And information is where real change begins.
Stephen's story didn't end in my office with a blood test result. It ended about 8 months later, when he came back for a follow-up and said something I still think about. He said, "I feel like myself again. And the scary part is, I didn't realize how long I hadn't." That's the thing about this condition that keeps me up at night as a clinician. Not the numbers, not the statistics. It's the years. The years men spend slightly less than themselves, slightly less present, slightly less there. Told it's normal, told it's age, told to accept it. You don't have to accept it. If what you heard today sounds like your life, or the life of someone you love, take one step tonight. Not tomorrow, tonight. Look up whether your doctor can order a full hormonal panel and make the appointment. That's it. One call, one conversation, one blood draw. That's how Stephen's life changed. Not with a dramatic decision, with a single question he finally decided to ask out loud. If this video reached you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Not because it's good content, because you might be giving them something they didn't know they were missing. And if any of these 7 signs felt personal, if you recognized yourself in something I said today, leave it in the comments, because you are not alone in this, and you've been alone with it long enough.